We're getting our live stream going.
It's fine.
We're
live.
Candles lit over here. And as we begin to enter into worship this morning, I just invite us all that there is hot cocoa and stuff in the back of the room. If you haven't gotten any, feel free. It's good to see all of you here this morning. A couple of just brief announcements. If you need a restroom, there is one in the building just outside. You'll go out the doors here and down the sidewalk to the right. And immediately following the worship service this morning, we're going to have our Advent Craft Hour, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We are going to need help getting some tables and chairs kind of set up in the room. So if you're planning on participating in that and hanging around, we'll look forward to seeing you for the Advent Craft Hour. It's going to be a lot of fun. So as we enter into a time of worship this morning, I invite us to still our hearts and our minds and our souls before God, and we'll now have the chiming of the hour. Would you stand as you're able as we sing, O come, Emmanuel? O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel, that walked on the exile, until the Son of God appeared. Sing, rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice, shall come that day, spring. Come that day, spring, come and cheer our spirits by night and drive away the shame. And its dark shadow put to night. Sing, rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall go to the holy come down here, baby, and open wide our heads. It's safe away that leads to life. It knows the path to answer. Rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to Rejoice one more time. Rejoice, rejoice, sing shall go to maybe see.
If you'll join me for the litany for Advent, I will read the plain text and you can join me with the bold. Beloveds, let us prepare for the advent of Christ.
Choosing hope, we remember that salvation is always near.
The world offers many opportunities to be overwhelmed by chaos.
Committing to the way of peace again, we choose none of them.
Tending to the spiritual hunger all around, we lean toward the promises of God.
Embracing joy, we welcome the miracle of God with us.
Stay alert. Remember, the holy arrival comes at an unexpected hour.
The inbreaking of love is always mysterious.
Are you prepared to welcome the divine, even if they arrive late at night, road-weary, humble, and on a donkey?
We will kindle the fires of hope, peace, joy, and love, and await their arrival.
Mysterious one, keep us attentive to your presence around and within. Do not let us get distracted by what numbs or overwhelms. Encourage us in all that makes us alive to you and the sacred possibilities for transformation before us.
Just stand again as you're able. Soul cries out with a joyful shout, and the God of my heart is great. My spirit sings the wondrous things that you bring to the mind. You fix your light on the servant's life, and my weakness you did not spare. So from east to west, my daily lives to the world. Oh, I am small, I got my all, you're great things to me. And your mercy lasts from the ends of the past to the end of the age to be. Oh, every day puts the world in shade. The world is about to turn. My heart shall sing, my heart shall sing of the day you break the fires of justice burn. Let the weight of tears for dawn draws near. The world is about to turn. About to the fortress tower, not a stone will be left on stone. Let the king beware, for your justice tells every time we're on his throne. The ones we push shall be no more, the fruit they can never learn. As our tables spread, every mouth is filled, for the world is about to turn. Nations rage, nation rage, we remember the old times past. God's mercy must be deliverance from the conqueror's crushing hands. His saving word I fortress is the promise that holds us bound. Till the spirit and rod be pushed by now, to the serving of heart shall sing. My heart shall sing of the day you free, and the fires of your justice burn. And away all tears will dawn's cross near, and the world is about to turn. That's what this time of year is about. It's about our expectation that God is birthing a new thing in the world, in and through Christ, and in and through us, the church. As we sing this next song, I invite you to reflect on it. Expected Jesus born to set thy people free from our fears and sins release us. Let us find our rest in thee. Winds of strength and consolation, hope of all the saints thou art. Dear desire of every nation, joy of every longing heart. Born thy people to deliver, born a child and yet a king, Lord to reign in us forever. Now thy gracious kingdom reign, by thy own eternal Spirit, moving our hearts alone, by thine own sufficient merit, leads us to thy glorious throne. You are good, good, oh, 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 you are good, good, oh. Behold, behold, behold the answer. Behold, behold, your being all things through. Behold, behold, behold the answer. Behold, behold, your being all things through. We whisper now, not destroy. We sow in tears and live in joy. My eyes are open. My eyes are open. Behold, behold, behold the King. Behold, behold, you're making all things new. Behold, behold, behold the King. Behold, behold, you're making all things new. You're making all things new. You're making all things new. Maybe see.
I heard it.
Hello, running the stream and speaking at the same time.
Multi-talented.
Thank you. Multi-talented. Thank you. I appreciate it. Keep it coming. No, when I was invited to speak for communion this Sunday, I was inspired by not only this week's text in the lectionary, which is one of the alternate texts, which is the Magnificat, Mary's song of praise to in response to receiving the news that she is with Jesus, she is with the Christ. And this sermon series, of course, is also on macro forces, micro responses. I think that's the title. And that can be a bit difficult to think about this week's Advent, which is joy, because there's a lot of macro forces going on in the world. We have 2022, we have Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we have less freedom. We have noises coming from everywhere. Thankfully, we do have protections for LGBTQ and interracial marriages now, but there's a lot of forces in the world that are trying to deprive of joy, especially within empire. And I can think of no better text, however, in this season to reflect joy than the Magnificat, because she sings of God lifting up the lowly, bringing down the proud and the powerful, healing the hungry, emptying the rich, coming to aid of God's children, which I can't overstate enough, is everyone. That's a lot of protections and lifting up things within a densely packed 11 verses or so. Mary's song recorded in Luke. And yet it's the first Advent season that I can remember reflecting on these lyrics, because when I grew up, I came from a conservative evangelical background. And whenever we talk about, bringing down the powerful and elevating the lowly, we often talk about forces that are usually in power that are demonic, quote unquote, and they need to be replaced with the right people, quote unquote. And now that I step back and I've been deconstructing and reconstructing my faith, I see a hypocritical framework at play, because conservative evangelicalism holds the keys to the kingdom of American Christianity, and in some respects, American empire as well. Poor, BIPOC, LGBTQ plus individuals are then pushed to the margins of the church, or even worse, they're told they have no place. Now, for current state of affairs in American Christianity and in America at large and the world don't strike you with joy, let me go back to this text in the Magnificat. As image bearers of God, we are actively working to bring the kingdom of heaven to earth. In order to realize Mary's vision that she sings about, we elevate each other, we elevate ourselves even, to bring about this transformation and do the vital work of looking within and then going without. It's in communities like this one, Peace of Christ, that work takes place, in the vital work of deconstructing and reconstructing, bringing something about that is healthy from what could potentially be dying. To bring about a more loving, more inclusive, more thoughtful, more advocating people that lifting up the lowly that work demands. So nothing brings me more joy when looking at the Magnificat than God blessing a poor young woman from a backwater Jewish Roman province with the Christ, elevating those like her and really all the world through her son. Now it's our turn, though, to do that work and lift up the lowly in our communities, country, and world. And nothing makes me more joyful this season than doing that work and participating alongside y'all. So now I invite you to participate in the liturgy of communion, the litany that we have up on the screen. I'll read the normal text, and y'all can read the purple text. God is within you.
God is also within you.
Lift up your hearts.
We join in the beloved community.
Let us give thanks for the blessing of life.
Together, we raise our voices in gratitude.
Instead of a prayer, I'm going to offer a little Lectio Divina, or just read the text and think of the words of the Magnificat. Luke 1:46 through 55. And Mary said, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior. For he has looked with favor on the lowly state of his servant. Surely from now on all generations will call me blessed. For the Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is his name. Indeed, his mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. He has come to the aid of his child in remembrance of his mercy, according to the promise he made to our ancestors, to Abraham and his descendants forever and ever. Amen." Great is the mystery of faith.
Christ has reimagined death, and we join him in bringing heaven to earth.
Now I invite you to participate in communion. We have our two deacons at the back where we'll do intinction. We have the bread, we have sanitizer, bread, dip it in the juice. And if you're not comfortable with that also, I think we also have the packaged cups and bread. So I invite you, starting from the back row to, front row to stand and go, and so on and so forth.
In our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, that never dies away. We'll sing it several more times. I just invite you to reflect on the words as we sing. Within our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, that never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, that never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, that never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, that never dies away. Sing it one more time. Within our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, that never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, that never dies away.
Good morning. It is so good to have all the children here today. How are y'all? Did you enjoy the hot chocolate this morning? Yeah. It was so good. So how many had marshmallows in it? Okay, awesome. Well, this morning we are going to talk about gifts. Okay? And as you see right here, I have a big present and there's a small present. That's right. So, I'd like to know how many of you would rather get the big present? If you'd rather get the big present, raise your hand. Okay, that's what I actually expected. How many of you would rather get the little present? Okay, we're about almost halfway split. That's awesome. How about you? The small one? Okay. Well, we're going to talk about these presents in a few minutes, okay? But first, I have a story to tell you, okay? So once upon a time, a long time ago, there were some people who lived in a town far away, and they started finding out some things. And they started learning some things. And they started watching each other and realizing that they were each being given a gift or a special ability that it wasn't something they could learn. Like it wasn't learning to play the piano, something like that. It was just maybe some of them could heal people. Like if somebody was sick, we'd go to this person and say, be well. And that person would get well like magic. And some of the people found, hang on, just a minute, okay? And then some of the people found out that they knew things. Like they could maybe look at this person and know something that they were going to do or have happen to them. And that's called prophecy. you just kind of know things, but it's not something you can find out by asking around or learning from a book. They just knew it. And maybe somebody could teach who never could teach before. Maybe someone could preach when they had never been able to preach before. And they knew that these gifts had come from God. God had made them able to do these things. But you know what? They started getting proud and thinking, oh, I'm big stuff because I can prophesy actually. Or one might say, oh, I'm special because I can teach and you can't teach. Or, well, look how many people I healed this week. How many did you heal this week? Oh, none? Oh, too bad, too sad. You know. So things like that were happening. So finally, one man, a leader in their faith, wrote them a letter. And he said, listen, y'all need to know something about these gifts that you've been given. He said, you're not loving people. You're not doing it out of love. And he said, loving people is not being proud. It's being kind. And he said, these special things you can do, when you do it without loving people, it kind of looks and sounds to God like a clanging cymbal or a loud gong. You know, it makes a loud noise that kind of hurts your ears, and it's not pleasant to look at, to listen to, or hear. And so these people had to learn that they had to love others. And so, this is what their teacher told them about their gifts. He said, and now these 3 gifts remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. So the people learned that the most important thing they could do was to love people. And you know what's neat about what we find out about love in the Bible? We find out that love is from God, that He wants each of us to have. Love is not listed as a gift, as a special ability. That means that all of us are able to love everybody if we let God put that love in our hearts. Okay? So, yes, ma'am. It is absolutely a true story, and if you look in your Bible at the part that's called 1 Corinthians in the 13th chapter, you'll find it there. Will you read it later and maybe next time tell me what you thought about it? I'd love to hear that. Okay? Great question. So now, let's talk about these presents. Okay? So, the thing that came in the big box, so this is actually empty, but something did come in it. The thing that came in it is a bass amp. And if you look back there, back near the black table, that thing that has the gray on the front, that's what came in this box. Now, let me tell you something about that gift. I can't play a bass. So if I had gotten this gift, it would have done me no good. I would have had to find someone else to give it to. It would. That's right. The man standing back there, it's his amp. And that was his gift from us to him. But yeah, but he can do great things with it. So he got a gift he can do something with to be good for other people. Now, what do you think came in this little box? I wish. That would be nice. But you know what? What do you think came in? Earrings? No. What do you think came in?
AirPods.
Not AirPods.
Probably like of those stick things that been over, or probably one of those.
A stick thing?
Yeah, probably like one of those over there.
Okay. Well, get what you think, Hannah.
Love.
Love? Close, actually. You're close. Like a fidget? No, it wasn't a fidget, but these are all great guesses. Yes, sir. What do you think, Hannah? I'm talking to you.
A Louis Vuitton necklace.
I'm sorry, what?
A Louis Vuitton necklace.
A Louis Vuitton necklace? Sorry. So let me tell you what came in this box. This was a gift to me, and it meant more than the amp that came in here because it was chocolate. It was so delicious. And that says love to me. Chocolate. So see how sometimes the gifts we give, now this is the season of giving gifts. And sometimes the gifts that we see someone else get, we might look at it and go, oh, I'd like to have that. But it maybe wouldn't be suitable for us, whereas something else would be. And that's how it is with the gifts and the abilities that God gives each of us. He gives it to the people that will use it to the best way that they can. Okay? Now, I have some little gifts this morning. And it's chocolate. So, if you cannot have nuts, let me know because I have some chocolate without nuts. But otherwise, and they'll be right here. So, one by one, yes, what would you like to say?
So, I did have nuts, but I don't like
Do you like chocolate without nuts? Then you take one of these, okay? You'll take one of those two. I only have 3. Is there anybody who needs chocolate without nuts?
You will
Okay.
eat the
I
nuts
don't
and
have
you will
that
like the nuts.
many. So I'd like to do one.
Unless you're allergic.
If we have a little ones here who do not have chocolate, we have a little toy for them. So the baby back here needs toy.
She needs chocolate.
Mom needs chocolate. She can have some. So I'd like you to one by one come up and take.
You know what, you can go back in.
Let's make a line.
After you get your chocolate, come back here to line up in the back. If you're going, it's melting.
They don't all have nuts, okay? Some of this is not have
The
nuts.
mix.
Would you rather have the toy or the chocolate? What would you rather?
I don't like nuts.
Okay, and eat the pieces that don't have nuts. Some of these that have nuts. The yellow wrapper.
I wanted to. I don't like chocolate.
Then don't eat the yellow wrapper. Okay? Come back later on.
Thank you, Sharon.
Mandy, what are the ages? If you are 9 and under, you can go in that line if you'd like to go to the kids class, 9 and under.
Morning. Okay, I'm going to be reading Matthew 11, 2 through 11 today. When John, who was in prison, heard about the deeds of the Messiah, he sent his disciples to ask him, "Are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else?" Jesus replied, "Go back and report to John what you hear and see. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed to the poor. Blessed is anyone who does not stumble on account of me." As John's disciples were leaving, Jesus began to speak to the crowd about John. "What did you go out into the wilderness to see? A reed swayed by the wind? If not, what did you go out to see? A man dressed in fine clothes? No. Those who wear fine clothes are in the king's palaces. Then what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is the one about whom it is written, 'I will send my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare the way before you.' Truly I tell you, among those born of women, there has not risen anyone greater than John the Baptist. Yet whoever is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he." We hear the words of God through these. Thanks be to God.
Thank you, God.
Yeah, I need to be able to see. Thank you. Oh. All right. Hello. Hold it. Okay, so I have a little fun activity for us here. Do you know what that is?
Where's Waldo?
Yes. Where is Waldo? I was in Target this recently with my daughter, and we came across some Where's Waldo posters, and she didn't know what it was. And I got to ask her, "Well, where's Waldo?" So I'll let you look for a little bit, but this is bringing up nostalgia for some, right? Where is Waldo? The scene is ever changing. The one you're looking at right now, for those who are listening later, is a holiday scene at a ski resort. I think, well, it's on a mountain. But sometimes it's a football stadium. I've seen carnivals, beaches, mazes. But always, he is tricky to spot. There are layers and layers of detail that make him so elusive. Landscape, sometimes there's buildings or animals or other people and objects. It's always really colorful. The colors dance all over the page. They dazzle your eyes as the seeker searches. And if you look individually, they're all good, positive, happy images. But on the whole, Waldo is never easy to spot because the image is always overwhelming. It is overwhelming because it is so busy. Did anyone find him? A lot of people. This was actually an easier one, not to downplay your work and your efforts there. But yeah, where is Waldo? Christmas in our culture can be a lot like a Where's Waldo photograph. The spectacular display of the season, the Christmas music and movies and lights and decor and food and parties and presents and people. It's kind of bewildering. It's also kind of amazing sometimes. On one hand, we're force-fed this commercialized version of joy. And on the other hand, we try our best to care for it, appreciate it, share it with our loved ones. But like those Where's Waldo images, there are just so many layers of hustle and bustle. And it is overwhelming. It is overwhelming because it is so busy. And I wonder, like that elusive Waldo, where is the joy in all of that? I will admit, I don't believe it's impossible to find it in there somewhere, concealed though it may be. It is there if we can just kind of grasp onto our perspective and hold it close throughout the season. There can be joy. There's joy in the giving and watching somebody you love light up at your thoughtfulness when you give them a gift. There's joy in holiday food and decor. I sit with a cup of coffee every morning, a Christmas mug, and I light a candle, and I look at the lights on my tree, and I reflect, and I enjoy myself. It's a sacred moment. There's joy to be found in holiday music and in festivities. I'm convinced of it. We have some planned right after this service. But even if we are able to create the capacity within us to maintain a healthy perspective on Christmas, even if we are dedicated to the practice of Advent, even if we are able to peel away at the layers and layers of stuff that ultimately doesn't matter, so that we are able to personally find some real joy amid the hustle and bustle, we must be keenly aware and sensitive to the fact that this time of year is not a time of joy for many people. In fact, for the millions of Americans who suffer from holiday depression, which is called actually seasonal affective disorder, classified in the DSM, it's a type of major depression. This is a dreaded time of year for millions of people, a hopeless time of year. And I wonder, where is the joy in this? You know, I think about so many people, a litany of people, recently widowed, the newly divorced, or the parent that is separated by death or distance from their child, or vice versa. I think about deployed troops and their families, or the countless Black and brown men funneled through our nation's mass incarceration system and their families. Speaking of families, I think about the trans and queer folks who have been rejected by their families. So where is the joy in this? I think about the hungry, the chronically homeless, those sleeping outside or in makeshift shelters this season, the mentally unwell, those who battle addiction or sickness, the grieving, the traumatized. Where's the joy in this? I think about those most vulnerable in our lives, in and around our society, and I think about the macro forces that got us here. At worst, suffering, but even at the very least, overwhelmed and overdone. And I wonder, where is the joy? We sing it's the most wonderful time of year, and yet so many people are engulfed by their circumstances, imprisoned by the forces of busyness and productivity that result in excessive demands, unrealistic expectations, debt, loss, and loneliness. And the thing is, this experience really isn't all that different from the rest of the year. If anything, I think our realities are just exasperated this time of year when holiday demands threaten to undo us. So when I think about it all, that bright, glimmering image of Where's Waldo, that overloaded and busy, though not without sheen and luster image, wanes in light of these very real situations. And the imagery of joy-seeking feels less hopeful, because it sure is hard to find joy within a prison surrounded by bars or bound by shackles. In today's reading, which Tiffany read, John was imprisoned. John the Baptist. The Gospel of Matthew references him as an Messianic prophecy fulfilled. Quote, the voice of one crying out in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make his path straight. The Gospel of Luke records John's miraculous conception. His mother having been barren and old in age, his even existing seemed impossible, yet here he is. He baptizes Jesus, even though he knows, he even says that it ought to have been the other way around. In this very passage, Jesus describes John by saying, among those born of women, no one has arisen greater than John the Baptist. What we know of John from the Bible then is that he was always destined to be important, significant, and yet in today's text we see a different side of him, a more human, more relatable side, because in our reading today, the great John the Baptist is just a man in prison, very likely not well-fed or taken care of, possibly lonely and discouraged, struggling emotionally and physically in ways we can't know, but clearly doubting himself and questioning the identity of Jesus. His faith in what he thought he had known is suddenly less hopeful, and it sure is hard to find assurance within a cell, surrounded by bars, bound in shackles. And so, in light of all of this, John is backtracking on what he seemed so sure about only chapters before. The text says that he sent word by his disciples and said to Jesus, "Are you the one who is to come, or are we to wait for another?" And with every reason to be filled with our own doubts and skepticism, we ask similar questions, especially this time of year, especially from the depths of Advent when our faith questions are, rightfully so, bigger than ever. But this is Advent, and on the church calendar, today is actually known as Gaudete Sunday. If you've been here at all before, you've heard me talk about it. But Gaudete means rejoice in Latin. So this is the Sunday in Advent in which we focus on joy. We've talked about hope, we've talked about peace, now we're talking about joy. So we light the pink candle, the rose-colored candle, and this is supposed to be our reprieve from the penitential purple. See, purple represents penance in the church tradition. And during Advent, similar to Lent, we're meant to actually fast and pray and wait. Is everyone doing that this season? We're supposed to be waiting for that ultimate moment. In this case, the Nativity of the Lord, when Christ entered the world as the light of the world, giving us finally a reason to rejoice. So, even though we're actually in a penitential season, on Gaudete Sunday, we focus on joy. We rejoice because we have reached the midpoint of Advent and Christmas is near. Our hope and peace and joy is near. So even though we take this day to rejoice, we are aware that we are, until the Nativity, until Christ comes, still surrounded by the depths. So John asks, "Are you the one who is to come? Or are we to wait for another?" And we ask similar questions too as we struggle to sift through our own circumstances and realities. And you should know, Jesus responds here, but he also responds in a really typical for Jesus kind of way. So he doesn't really answer the question, and he's very indirect, and he says something totally different than what they thought he was going to say. He doesn't give a straight answer, in other words. Instead, he says, "Go and tell John what you see and hear. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them." Jesus does not answer as a coming powerful leader or warrior or king or in any way that people would have expected based on the prophecies of the Messiah. Instead, Jesus answers as a healer, as a participant, or as we like to call it, a co-conspirator of peace. Jesus answers as a giver of joy. His response is hopeful and exciting, especially in light of what he accomplished on earth in his time. But thinking of his response in light of today, in light of our world, can be challenging. Like, where is Jesus now? What about the people struggling, imprisoned in their own cells of despair now? See, I think, and maybe this is why I like Advent so much, but I think our entire lives are like Advent, and we just keep waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for Christmas to come, for Christ to be our light, our hope, our joy, all these things promised. And we look around and we just see people everywhere suffering. You know, it makes it hard to have faith. Many of us see all of this suffering from our own cells of imprisonment, and the possibility of joy just seems so hidden underneath it all. So we question the notion of Christ. Is he really who he says he is? Where's the joy? And you know, I think it's with us. You know, I think maybe Teresa of Avila, maybe she was on to something when she said Christ has no body but our own. And, you know, maybe, just maybe, songs like Joy to the World or days like Gaudete Sunday are not for us to remember how on earth to receive joy, but maybe they're more for us to remember to give it, to create it, to be Christ's hands and feet, bringing tidings of comfort and joy to the metaphorically imprisoned, being healers of broken hearts, of loneliness, of grief, and physical needs, being healers by being givers of joy. So we notice the people around us, especially who need joy in this season. We validate and support the very real feelings and conditions experienced by people this time of year. We allow ourselves to be mindful of the need for joy all around us, and where we can extend joy, we do. We give it as our humble offering. In today's text, Jesus says that John is so great that he's more than a prophet. And yet, in the same breath, Jesus says that the least in the kingdom of heaven is still greater than John. And I wonder, who are these nameless masses he is referring to, if not us? And what is greatness, if not our everyday postures, the small ways we move in this world? Could our micro responses have macro, which is to say great, impacts? See, Jesus didn't let us off the hook in this text. We're challenged to be like John, to be great prophets ourselves, who are, yes, like John, prone to cynicism, just as much as the next person, but regardless called to embody the good news of the Christ way, to share it as wilderness people living in wilderness times, just like John did. This is how God is seen and known and experienced, and this is how joy can be known and seen and experienced among us as well. Now, listen, I'm not trying to put more on our shoulders here. The macro forces at play in our time say, consume, 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 do, be busy or face failure, be overextended or face rejection. So when I talk about being a joy giver, I'm not piling on or adding to that. I'm not saying do to the extent of your own depletion or give from an empty, joyless well. I'm saying we can change our paradigms completely. We can get free. We can finally jump off the hamster wheel. We can overcome these macro forces of consume, do, stay busy, and we can do it beginning with joy. Like any good spiritual work, this is both and. It must begin within ourselves, and it will extend to the collective. No one is neglected here. So I'm saying it is actually really urgent that you consistently prioritize your joy, that you listen to it and for it and then honor it, that you become a joy giver toward yourself, because this is the path to freedom. This is how we can daily divest ourselves from the prisons of unnecessary busyness and overproduction, because the only way to know what to let go of, where to pivot, and how to make these shifts is to truly know what gives you joy. So as we run toward joy, we run toward clarity. And as we nourish ourselves with the joy we create, and as we gift it to ourselves, we begin to understand what joy looks like and feels like. We get really familiar with it, and we get used to having it around. And we get better at extending it. We become joy givers, offering joy from the wellspring within us. This is my hope for us. This is my prayer, that we would peel back the layers of hustle and bustle that is crowding our lives this Christmas season and beyond, and that we would do the inner work necessary so that the joy of Christmas, for example, won't just be a tiny glimmer shimmering from deep within all that busyness, but that joy that is brightly exposed for all in our lives to see and to share. May we be joy givers this Christmas, and may God provide you with joy givers to refresh your soul, especially if you find yourself on the other side of loneliness or grief or hardship this season. I pray all these things in the name of the prison-freeing, soul-healing, joy-giving Jesus. Amen.
stand as you're able as we sing. Civilization Son of God sustains living refuge. Kingdom opens doors before. Kingdom opens doors before. Oh, let you be there with glory. Gloriously, the day is good. Let we in the darkness, our home was in the wall. Here the living curses, beautiful curse. Love of God, joy in life. Ocean deep, ocean wide. Justice flows for I live. Prince of Peace, daily bread. All that will be great, with glory light. Glorious will the day means good night. Every ever darkness of home was in the light. Every curse, oh, every curse, oh, every curse. Beautiful verse.
Is this on? Okay, so there are people going to grab children and grabbing things, but we're going to like take a picture. So if you don't want to be in the picture, sneak away. But I want you to be in the picture. Okay, so we're gonna take a group picture, but you can sit down for a second because not everyone's here yet. I was gonna give instructions for the rest of what's happening today. So basically, right after this picture, I actually need Naomi. Okay. Right after this picture, we are going to ask whoever's able to help us set up for the craft hour, which is going to be in here. But how? Are those the tables back there? So we're going to need 6 tables and chairs around them. So after the picture, if you're able and willing to just grab a table and set chairs around it, please help. And if you are familiar with our pack-up process for all this other stuff, that you can help with that too. But after that, we have breakfast tacos and stuff outside. So we're just excited to have you here. It's very quiet. Okay, the only other thing I was going to say is next week we'll be online, and then on the 24th, which is Saturday, we will be here at 5 p.m. for a little Christmas Carol live nativity hot cocoa situation. So bring your family and friends and come join us for Christmas Eve. That's the last service of the year. Okay. Y'all want to get up and just push in? Tell people to come and get in.
Are you doing the benediction?
Are you doing the-
No
Oh, I
benediction.
forgot about the benediction. I'm going to do that first and then squeeze in. We go rejoicing in the assurance that God intends good things for us, for the earth and every living creature. The God who liberates the oppressed, who heals the hurting, who frees the captive, desires to bring forth new life among us. And so with joy, let us go in search of Christ, welcoming every sign of love and flesh.
Amen.
Amen.